Good afternoon and welcome to Like a Boss One-on-One Live. Today, Portland Press Herald publisher and CEO of Masthead, Maine, Lisa DeSisto, will be speaking with Dajuan Eubanks, president of the Maine Celtics. My name is DJ Martin and I'm the director of advertising with the Portland Press Herald. I would like to take a moment and thank our sponsors who make this program possible, and many of whom who have been supporting Like a Boss for years. They are Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Hub International, JP Morgan Chase, Vistage, Coffee by Design, and our very special presenting sponsor, Bernstein Shirt. To say a few words, I'd like to introduce Asha Echeverria of Bernstein Shirt. Asha?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and I'm Asha Echeverria, and I'm a shareholder and the chair of the Construction Law Practice Group at Bernstein Shirt. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today to bring us back together for the fourth event of this year's Like a Boss series. Bernstein Shirt is very proud to sponsor today's event, featuring Dajuan Eubanks. It's really exciting to sponsor a series that provides a personal view into the everyday realities of leadership, today in conjunction with the Maine Celtics. The coronavirus outbreak has posed some difficult decisions for the sports event industry, with so many sporting events being canceled, moved, or postponed. And just like all of us, leaders have been forced to get creative when it comes to problem solving, remaining agile, and responsive in the face of new challenges, all while preparing for the future. And I just, from my perspective, want to say that I personally have had the pleasure of working with Dajuan for the past several years as a member of the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. And more recently, he has been instrumental in driving the Chamber's efforts for racial equity and inclusion, just a tip of the iceberg of Dajuan's efforts in this area. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation to hear how Dajuan and the Maine Celtics are navigating these ever-changing circumstances as a team. I'd like to thank Lisa DeSisto and the Portland Press Herald for hosting this program. And so as to not delay any further, I'm going to turn it back to DJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. We're so appreciative of the partnership that we have with Bernstein Shirt. And now, please enjoy Like a Boss. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa DeSisto and Dajuan Eubanks.
Maine. Up here, we cherish the good times. We love our lobster, the changing seasons, and basketball. No type of weather will stop us from seeing our beloved Celtics. Over the years, from Portland to Holton, our fandom and loyalty has remained strong. And we were eager to welcome our own team back in 2009. Rajon Rondo, Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and Taco Fall are all reminders of why we love these two teams. And now, we're solidifying that bond even further. So we can all root for the Celtics together.
He's got it! Throw it down, Rob Williams.
Crustacean Nation bleeds green.
Get it, and it goes in!
We are the Maine Celtics.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, Dajuan.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you here today, and we're going to talk about green lobsters. Is that real or a myth? You have a great story to tell, and let's get at it. I do wish we could be together today in person, but one day, like a boss, we will be back at the House of Music and make it all happen. But for now, I welcome you to the Zoom screen. So let's go. So let's go to the Wayback Machine and just start with, where did you grow up?
Well, first, Lisa, I want to say thank you to your sponsors and Asha as well, because I know sometimes we can get going and, tend to forget to thank those people who got this thing going in essence. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you on this panel. And so to start off, your question, where I was born and raised, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, a little town called Roosevelt City in between Bessemer and Birmingham. And so I lived there until I was 13.
And we were talking about in our pre-meeting, which is when I learned so much about you, because you and I have known each other for years, but I was just so delighted to spend that one-on-one time with you. Let's call it 1v1 time, and just learn about your story. And that day we were talking about the weather, and you were talking about doing tornado drills as a kid.
Yeah, and I've shared this story a little bit for those that really know me, is that as a kid growing up, and personally as an individual, I would prefer to be in a location wherever I live where I can be warned before things happen. And so, as a kid growing up in Birmingham in Tornado Alley, it was nothing out of the norm for us to do tornado drills or hear sirens going off and having to go into the hallway while we were in school, or when you're at home, go into a closed structured room in order to prevent yourself from being swept away by a tornado. But then as time moved on, coming here to Maine and dealing with snow and all of that, it's been okay because you can still know that things are coming. But when we had that earthquake a couple of years ago,
Oh yeah.
it was a little bit shaking for me, literally and physically in a sense in that way. And so growing up in Birmingham, that was one of the things that I would say as a kid that really stood out to me in the sense of like the mother nature and what could happen in that sense.
And when you graduated from kindergarten, do we happen to have a photo of that?
Lisa, because I love you, I was able to go in the archives. Not many people have received these. And so, we'll give a quick shot. Yep, that's me.
Wow. Kindergarten graduation. That is very, very impressive. And thank you for digging that up for us. So what was your youth sports experience like? Were you on the 6th grade travel team? Like how did that all happen?
No. Growing up in Birmingham where I was raised, we were considered sandlot kids. And so in our neighborhood where we were, and the community that I was a part of was all Black. So obviously growing up in Birmingham, I was born in 1971. Segregation was still there by community, but I mean, we were integrated, but it was still segregated. And so in my community, we had a group of kids in a field that was on the back street of our community that had a nice sized field that we played everything from football to baseball to basketball, even pretending that we were Evel Knievel, jumping off of hills into that field to really just be that sandlot kid, that sandlot experience. And we played by season in that sense. And so when it was football season, we were on the fields playing football, and believe it or not, even hockey, we didn't play in the field. We played in the roadway. We would put sawhorses at the end of each end of the street, and then play with these cast iron metal skates that had the cast iron wheels and brooms and basketballs. And so, I did not have the opportunity that I would say like most kids today play in AAU in that sense, but I was that sandlot kid that was told, well, be home before the street lights go off.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are a lot of parents listening today saying, "Oh, if only we had a sandlot, get those kids off the screens." Yeah. But it sounds like you were never inside. You were just going from one sport to the next. So then your mom moved you guys to Texas. So
yeah. So I was raised in a single parent household, didn't know my father, and so my mother at the age of 13 for me, and I had a younger brother that was 9 years different than I was. She decided to move us from Birmingham to Texas, Dallas specifically, to give us additional opportunities at exposure and accessibility to different things in life. And so at that age, I moved from Birmingham. It was during my middle school years. And so it was a wide awakening for me, earth-shattering awakening for me, because once again, coming from an environment where it was all Black, I had never been exposed to anyone of a different race, other than going to the grocery store, the mall, or perhaps having an occasional teacher when I was in Birmingham. And so moving to Dallas was it was a eye-opening experience for me when it came down to dealing with multiple race and things of that nature. And so it was a growth period for me as well.
And that was also where you got your first job.
Yes, my first job.
Which was?
And my first job was a paperboard deliverer. I delivered papers, for the Dallas Morning News. Yeah. And so I lived in an area that was in North Dallas, a place with a series of apartments in it called The Village. And so at the age of 13, when I moved there, my first job was applying for them to deliver papers on the weekends and then after school during the summer.
That and the Dallas Morning News. So what was that, like the mid 80s? That was a big paper.
That was in the mid 80s. It was.
A lot of inserts. Wow.
Exactly it. But that was my first go at it.
But for people who've tuned into Like a Boss before, I do want to say this is a common theme with CEOs and heads of companies, that they started working at an early age and learned their entrepreneurial skills delivering newspapers. And routes are open. So for the next Dajuan Eubanks, let's go. Send me a private message. So you actually didn't start playing organized basketball till you were a freshman.
Yes, a freshman in high school. And so, like I said earlier, being a sandlot kid, I never really dedicated myself to one sport. But then I recognized once I got into high school that my way to go to college, I was strong academically, but my way coming from the area that I came from to get to college would have been either through community college or the military. And so I was lucky enough and fortunate enough, my freshman year, I was 5'8", came back my sophomore year, 6'3.5", and so I had a growth spurt over that summer,
I'll
and so
say.
my freshman year, I focused on my grades and have always been, a good student in that sense, but realized that perhaps through sports, I might be able to open up an opportunity for me to go off to school. And so I didn't really start playing organized till I was a sophomore. And even then, I won't say it was a struggle, but it was a big change for me because I was like a gazelle running down the floor that was awkward and uncoordinated and all of those things, but happened to have the right coach along my side that pulled me aside, gave me a jump rope and said, hey, if you want to become better at this, start with a jump rope. And so that is how I ended up kind of honing in on my sports skills, in particular with basketball, to lead towards gaining an education in that sense.
Oh, there's already so many good tips. The jump rope, I didn't know about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't really a standout in high school then, but you caught the attention of colleges.
Yeah, I did. And so I was lucky. The school that I attended in Dallas for high school was known for producing Division I scholarship athletes, in particular pertaining to basketball. And so my senior year, I had 6 Division I scholarship athletes on my team. And so as I began playing as a sophomore, like I said, my grades were already great in the sense of like schools looking at you and saying, all right, pass the SAT, all you really need is a 900 to begin with. And then my skill set began to grow on the floor. And at the end of my sophomore year, I began getting recruited. And so with this opening up a door for me to say, all right, here's my shot at really changing my circumstance and potentially getting a full ride to school. I knew at that time I wanted to be like a civil engineer because I had an uncle that was working for GT and I was good with my hands, great at science and math, loved being outdoors. And so from his experience in Birmingham that I learned from, I was like, engineering is where I wanted to be. And I was like, okay, sophomore, junior year, I'd like to go to a science and engineering school. And just so happened, Rice University came to the table at the end of my sophomore year, recruited me heavily over that summer. And my junior year, I signed early for them because all of the marks were lining up for me, and I did not know that I was going to go on and potentially become a professional basketball player the way I did. But at that time, it was my way to get to school. And so education was always my way that I was going to go. Financially, I may not have had the opportunity if it was only through education, but lucky enough for me in basketball and growing to become a freak of nature and having potential, to your question, was what really opened the door for me, is that I wasn't a superstar, but I was athletic and I was determined and driven in that sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting too that your academics were there. Are you gifted academically, or did you really have to try, or you just had a great work ethic?
Great work ethic, but also I think I'm very open to. I'm a constant learner, and I think that's the one thing when people get to know me is that I'm always asking questions. I'm always exposing myself to different scenarios because I just love learning, and so that's a constant for me. And so I think at a young age, because of the way I was brought up and, like things that were told to me that potentially I couldn't achieve, I always was driven with the home support of like, well, if you really want to do it, you apply yourself and you can make it happen, and so that was the balance that I had in my life growing up. Although I was in a single parent household, education was always taunted as the number one thing to focus on. And believe it or not, when I started playing basketball, my mother was like, well, you're only playing basketball because people are saying that you're tall. You don't have to play basketball because you're tall. And little did she know I was also trying to figure out a way in order to go to school as well too. And it worked out in my favor.
Yeah. So you went into Rice as a civil engineering major, and then how did you graduate?
So going in as a civil engineering major, science and engineering school, pretty much called the Harvard of the South, but I like to call Harvard the Rice of the North in that sense. And, and so went in under that direction, got there. Rice was really putting a heavy emphasis on their athletic programs, qualifying for postseason play, basketball being one of those. And so the work ethic on both sides, both science and engineering academically, plus the athletic deal, was something I had to find a balance in. And so in doing so, I ended up pulling back to business management in order to make everything meet the goal that I needed in order to maintain my academic and athletic scholarship in that way. And so as I went through Rice 5 years, I redshirted my first year and then medical redshirted my third year in. They upheld my scholarship. I ended up coming out with my business management degree with a focus in sports management and exercise science, simply because I thought I would stick around the sport of basketball somehow, some way, not knowing that I would be here today.
Right.
Yeah.
It is interesting, all the twists that you took during that pathway, but they've all really prepared you for what you're doing now, and then what you were doing post-college. But let's, of course, take a stop and talk about the Harlem Globetrotters. So Did you get recruited for the Globetrotters?
Yeah. And so like every other athlete, you probably heard the story of them like, all right, at first you started out and you didn't think you were going to be able to play. And then all of a sudden you get in a situation where you begin to prove yourself. And I was able to do that in Houston when I attended Rice, because we played against a lot of professional basketball players in the community already there. And so as I got into Rice and began to develop more, it became more of an opportunity for me to potentially play professional basketball. And then, as I mentioned earlier, my third year in, I medical redshirted because of just a freak incident. And so I ended up sticking at Rice, saying, okay, instead of leaving to go early somewhere and apply, whether through training camp or go across seas with an agent and try to play, I decided to say, all right, if it's meant for me to play, I'll graduate, get my piece of paper, and then I'll go from there. And lucky enough for me, the Globetrotters happened to be, the head coach happened to live in town close to Rice. I was working out my 5th year there, and they recruited me like I was in high school all over again. And so I wasn't looking for them. They came looking for me. And it was a story and a match made in heaven, because it allowed me to be able to start my professional career and continue on with basketball at a professional level out of school.
And it's it's a worldwide brand. When you think about it, it does nothing but make you smile. I think Strawberry's popping up a photo of you as a Globetrotter. Thank you. I'm sure many people have seen that one before, but it's always fun to remember that. So you obviously have the basketball talent, but how did the Globetrotters build up the other skills that you need to be successful as a Globetrotter? I'm talking about comedy, entertaining, all of those elements.
Yeah. So it's like anything when you talk about a skill set. I mean, obviously they came out and you had to have great basketball skill on the court and be competitive and able to play and understand the game. But they took it a step further in understanding the personality and character that you brought to the court as well too. And so inherently, a lot of the guys that have tried out for the Globetrotters, and there have been a ton of guys over the 90 plus years of its existence, be Globetrotters in their lifetime at some point in time. And those individuals all had somewhat of a common thread. They enjoyed playing the game of basketball at a high level, had a competitive mindset, but was also able to turn on the character and personality to entertain people as well. And, I like to share with people that, like with everything, you have challenges. And like when you're a Globetrotter, you travel the world and you're traveling 8, 9, 10 months out of the year, a different hotel every night, a game every night. And to your point of your question of how do you cultivate and train for that, every day was work for us and practice, but for the consumer, it was a game and a show. And so although, as a consumer, you come in, you buy your ticket, we are doing a show and we make a mistake. You may not see it, but we saw it. And so we were able to correct it the next night, and so inherently what they try to do as an organization is find guys that have the capability of being great athletes on the court, understand the game, but also can take it that step further and be personable and have character to engage with people and bring joy to the life for at least 2 hours a day, and that was I would say the bond that connected all of us, whether we were there for 5 years or whether we were there for 20 years, was the fact that we knew traveling the world, entertaining people, that for at least 2.5 hours a day, we were going to be able to have people smile and enjoy themselves from what we did and performed around.
Yeah. My dad used to take us to see the Globetrotters at the old Boston Garden. And we used to say, do we have to stay and watch the Celtics game? That's how much we loved it. That's how much. Yeah. So, I mean, that brand really did introduce so many people worldwide to basketball. So you're trotting the globe. What's your favorite place that you got to visit?
One of my favorite places that really stand out is Monaco and the French Riviera, Cannes and Nice. And so I think, as I was sharing a story with you before, the reason why that stood out to me so specifically is because, as I mentioned earlier, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, very secluded for me, coming from a singular focus environment in that sense. And my way of escaping that was watching like Robin Leach Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and National Geographic to really kind of dream about places that I wanted to go. And little did I know when I was that age back then, looking at Robin Leach and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and Monaco standing out as one of those places, that I knew I would get a chance to go in a celebrity status. And so when we rolled into Monaco, and I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but everything changes because, you just can't up and move to Monaco. You have to be invited. And so it's a very elite community in that sense. And as we rolled in, coming from the French Riviera into Monaco and just looking at the rolling hills, it reminded me of sitting in my grandmother's living room, looking at Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous on TV and saying, this is it. This is exactly what I was looking at there. And so that's always stood out to me. But there are other places like South America, and being able to travel through the Andes and, you know, the history and just the mystique of that mountain range in itself was also great. And I love the people in South America as well too. And so, but those would be two that stood out to me as far as highlights.
What an incredible opportunity though to get to do so much travel, and to your point, arrive in all these locations with celebrity status is pretty cool. So after the Globetrotters, you went into sports marketing at a big agency, and really did some what I view as kind of groundbreaking work and put programs together that we sort of all enjoy today. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we got to speed up to you getting to Maine. I went too long.
So
I knew it.
We got to talk about Maine, you know. So after my days with the Globetrotters, I was lucky enough to be recruited once again by an agency out of the Midwest called GMR Marketing. And at the time, they were on the forefront of live event marketing, or event marketing is what it was called back then. Really, it was called entertainment marketing back in the mid-90s when I met them, but it's event marketing. And so I was fortunate enough to be recruited by them after doing a tour for Apple Computer when they launched their first laptop with the keypad. They did a historical Black college tour, and they brought the Globetrotters in to be entertainment, to draw these kids in to the venue in order to share their technology. And so through that connection, I was able to make my entree into my professional career in event marketing. Started out with them working for the NBA, was the first tour manager of the NBA Jam Band, also for Major League Baseball, did work for P&G and launching a lot of their products, PepsiCo, and also ended up working on behalf of for McDonald's Corporation. So it allowed me to really hone my business skills, and particularly when you talk about servicing clients and brand launching and things of that nature. It really allowed me to put my wheels in motion around what I ultimately thought I wanted to do, and that was to run an agency of some sort, whether it be my own or working for a major conglomerate of some sort. And so that's where I ended up getting my direction into what led me to here, but what prepared me for here ultimately in that sense.
So then how'd you get to Maine?
Like most people that aren't born here, either I went to school or you marry into Maine, and I married into Maine. I'm divorced now, but I was also able to find work because the agency that I worked for purchased the company here at the time as well too, to make it easy for me to transfer over, you know. And so that company, Pierce Promotions, is in existence now. They became part of GMR Omnicom. I came over as part of the acquisition and transition there, and that's how I ended up coming to Maine.
And I think you shared with me you've lived in Maine longer than anywhere else.
Yeah, I have, and that's
So we're declaring ourselves Mainers, Dajuan. Like enough with this. Enough. We're Mainers. Let's go. Right?
We're Mainers from away. Make sure you put that on there, all right?
Nope. We don't even have to qualify it. We don't. We love that. We couldn't love the state any more than we do. So
yeah. So the question was brought up to me a couple of weeks ago by someone that we might mention later on here about, where do you consider yourself to be from? You know, am I a Alabamian? Am I a Texan? Or am I a Wisconsinite? Or am I a Mainer? And I was like, you know what? That's a great question. And I really thought about it. It was like, Maine has been the place that I've been the longest in my life, because in Birmingham, I was only there until I was 13. Then I moved to Texas, went to middle school, high school, and college there, which was only really about 12 years. I was in Milwaukee for around 6 years, and I've been here for 17, you know. And so it's like, I look back on my trajectory and how I've moved around, and to say that I've been in Maine for 17 years, one, if you had told me that 15, 20 years ago, I would have been like, no way, me in Maine, not making it happen. But since I fell in love with the state, and it offers a lot of the things that I enjoy doing personally as far as outdoor activity, but also the people, it's just been great for me to be here and establish an additional family is what I would call it. Although I don't have family here, I have a lot of family here in that sense. And so it's been great for me to kind of come into my own in this community in the state of Maine.
So the Red Claws form, I think 2009, you see a position available. So I think this is a great message for anyone looking to put themselves, you know, in a place to get their dream job. How do you go about it?
Well, this wasn't necessarily my dream job. This more for me was like, you know, I spent 3 years with the agency here, decided to make some moves in a sense, like I just had my third kid as well too, really wanted to make this place home. And in the agency world, this was more of a bedroom community for me, because a lot of my clients were national or global. And so as I began to make the shift, and the shift that you and I talked about was the quality to quantity shift that most of us go through. And I have to give a shout out to Bill Ryan Sr., because as he was one of our former owners, he would speak to young professionals and share with them his trajectory throughout his career. And one of the things he would say is like, when you're in the age of 25 to 35 as young professionals, our mindset is set around quantity. It's like we're making as much money as possible and, really trying to establish ourselves financially in life. But then when you hit that 35 to 40 age bracket, it's like it becomes more about quality of life in that sense. And so for me, at that time in 2008, 2009, I was making the decision to really have this place become home for me, stick around with my kids, in particular my third one being born, and just really trying to make this a long-term solution for me. And the way to do that was through this team, and lo and behold, the way I ended up being introduced to the team, I had to go about it in a non-traditional way. I mean, I had sent an email to the previous ownership group as they were beginning to launch and tell the story about them coming on board with a G League team or a D League team at the time, and I shot a few emails out, and through those emails, I was like, hey, I'd love to just make a connection, learn about ways that I might be able to potentially provide my services to you, because at the same time, I sent my resume out to other big brands here, taking my skill set from the agency side to the brand side, hopefully in that sense. And so didn't get any feedback from them, kind of got pushed away. And then I got wind that, they were going to be doing a presentation in the month of February at Eggs and Issues, which is the monthly deal that the Portland Regional Chamber puts in place. And so I was like, all right, you know what do I have to lose? Not many 6'9" African-Americans worked for the NBA, played for the Harlem Globetrotters, I want to call Portland, Maine home. We'll walk through their door, and I walked in, didn't bring my resume because I didn't want them to think I was very overqualified for the position, and just share with them where I was as far as life in general. And next thing you know, they were like kids in a candy store. And I was on board a week after the team was announced as VP of Corporate Partnerships. And so that's how I ended up landing this role. And when I say it wasn't necessarily my ideal role, like everyone potentially here in this community have seen other organizations, semi-professional basketball teams in particular, have tried to give it a go here, and they know they've come and gone. And so I recognized that coming in, being in the community for 3 years, that there was going to be a challenge to it. And I didn't quite understand if the NBA was going to stay true to this as well either. And so I saw this as a life raft for me to begin introducing myself to businesses here, to provide the opportunity for them to get to know me, and that if something were to happen to this organization, at least now, instead of it being a bedroom community, I would have networking opportunities here in order to show my skill set to say, all right, I'm here. And lo and behold, my life raft became my ship. So that's how that story ended, in that sense, as to like, I was just looking to make a shift in life quality wise, wanted to make this place home, and had to make some changes in that sense. And in order to make those changes, it wasn't just through paper and email. It had to be like forward and really tell my story and communicate, build a relationship in that way. So that's how I ended up here.
What I love about that story, one, it's the power of networking. It's not just about lobbing and emails, but it's really about showing up. But they must have been out of their mind when they saw your sports marketing and your event marketing and fan engagement work, which are skills that you're using to this day.
Well, when I met them it was at the Holiday Inn, and I made the personal introduction. I think they were excited first and foremost, like, oh, you're the one, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, originally, I think they thought I wanted to be a coach.
Yeah.
And that was the furthest thing from the truth that I had ever told. I was like, there's no way I want to be a coach. I bring business to the table, business acumen to the table, and I love to work for the organization, some capacity. And once again, it was like kids in a candy store. You can see their legs shaking underneath the table and everything. And so it worked out in my favor.
That's great. So many constants, right? The Holiday Inn's still there waiting for us to come back and have some eggs. Okay, so let's talk about the rebrand, right? So the Red Claws get acquired by the Celtics in 2019, and then the rebrand happens just a few months ago, right?
Yes, May.
Okay, help me with the Green Lobster.
Well, we could get into a massive debate around the lobster color and it being green. I mean, I have to share this with you as well, too. When we unveiled a red lobster back in 2009, people came to us like, are you guys crazy? Don't you know a red lobster means it's dead? When you talk about it in a sports field. So you're going to get it either way. But the one thing I will say to that, Lisa, is that there may be some people on this call that say lobsters are green as they come out of the water as well, too. So, but for us, it made a lot of sense because we wanted to get that brand consistency. That Kelly green of the Boston Celtics, you can go anywhere in the world and you put it up, they'll say Boston Celtics. And so it made a lot of sense for us to go and become a lot closer to our parent brand in that way. And it also made sense historically here, like the video that we played in the beginning on the onset of this interview. I mean, I got chills at that just listening to it again. I hadn't listened to it in a while, but that's this community, and there's a steep history of the Kelly green affiliated with the Celtics organization having a presence in the state of Maine for years now. And so it only made sense for us to marry our brands even closer in that way and carry the Celtics name as well. And so I look forward to continuing to showcase what we're going to bring to this community with the help of additional resources coming out of Boston. And, they're vested in it like we were in the beginning in 2009. And so I'm excited to continue on what we've done under a new brand, the Maine Celtics.
We are all in on the Maine Celtics brand and even the Green Lobster because we love Crusher. So we're glad that he continues, that he endures.
Yes.
So what's your outlook for the season with so much uncertainty?
The outlook is right now, we're very optimistic as well. We're planning forth as though we're going to have a full season, 24 games, and we're going to have full capacity in the arena. Now, like with everything, in particular over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we're beginning to see mask mandates and obviously vaccination mandates as well too. And so we're going to do whatever we need to do in order to provide a safe environment, not only for our staff and players, but also for the general consumer in that way. And so, if you paid attention to us last year, we did not participate in the G League operations, which was a single site scenario down in Orlando. And specifically, we did that because we felt it necessary for us to be in front of our fans. And our hope here this year is that 1, we're excited with the new brand, but 2, we're going to be able to get back to doing what we do best in this community as far as like entertainment around basketball in that sense. And so we're hopeful that things will continue to go the way they're going in the sense of like, all right, we're opening back up, but then having to get over these hurdles that are coming up with the spike and then learning how to navigate around it and things of that nature. And so our plan is to have the season open November 12th. That's our opening night as of right now. Our schedule is yet to come out, but we're planning on 24 home games this season.
Yeah, because this will be the first time at a game that the brand is in full effect, right?
Exactly. It's exposed. Yep.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Yes,
And
it
your new coach was just announced
Yes, it is.
yesterday, but in today's Press Herald, if you
Yeah, Gerald Christian.
Yeah.
He's coming from a previous NBA job with the Washington Wizards, and so I'm excited to bring him to this community. I think he's going to be a great addition, not only to our team but to our community and the Boston Celtics organization overall. Great young talent, up and coming, and as you guys have known over the years with us, I mean, the Celtics have done a great job of identifying talent that necessarily you haven't heard of, but then all of a sudden they get in our possession and it's like, oh, now we see why they're here. And so I feel Jarrell is going to be that same type of individual for us as a coach this next season.
But I miss Taco.
I think we all miss Taco in some form,
too.
some fashion in essence, and so we were very fortunate to play a part in Taco's trajectory as he moved on as a phenomenon in itself, but yeah, I too am a little sad to see Taco move on, but I can rest assured that we will have other talented individuals coming through the expo, funneling from the Celtics coming up this way north.
Yeah, I remember those photos we had in the Press Herald when he was swimming at the Boys and Girls Club. His wingspan is like phenomenal. So
yeah.
So speaking of tall people, so what are the 3 questions that you most commonly get asked?
And that's what I tell people all the time. If I ever put 3 answers on my chest, I would never have a conversation. It was like, how tall are you? Do you play basketball? And who for? And if I put those 3 answers on my chest, I would never have a conversation in that sense, and so that's been a lifetime thing since like 10th grade in that sense. Yeah. But more importantly, as I've become an adult and went on professionally to play. But yeah, if I ever, it's always, well, how tall are you? And then, did you play basketball? And I'm like, yes. And then I'll ask, who'd you play for? Oh, the Harlem Globetrotters. It becomes, no, you didn't. I was like, I didn't say I was going to tell you. You asked me. So Why are you going to combat that whole deal? But yeah, those are the 3 things that I always get asked all the time.
But what I love about your story is you bring so much more to the table than just your height, really, right?
Right.
So you've had this platform that you've brought forward. I watched your the talk that you gave to the Promise Scholars at USM about it. And I just want to give you a couple minutes to share what the Kids platform is all about.
Yeah, Kids for Life is a platform I developed when I began playing with the Globetrotters. And as a Globetrotter, you're required to also go out and speak to kids and corporations and organizations all over the world on behalf of the organization. And so, in order to really connect with the communities that I was involved with and engaging with, I always wanted to come up with a common story that was simplified, that everyone could understand. And whether you were 3 years old in a room or 70 years old in a room, be able to identify with it. And not only was it to identify, but to feel that it was authentic. It wasn't something where I was standing in front of you saying, all right, this is what I did. I learned this, do this. It's my life story. And so Kids for Life was something I developed to help me be consistent with my story. And it's applied in so many ways, and I use it still to the day. And it's just a simplified form of really giving kids an aspirational model to get themselves out of the circumstances that they're in. And that circumstance oftentimes will revolve around what success means and looks like to them. And so, like I say, the basis of the story is that we're all kids. When we become adults, we oftentimes forget what it means to dream. And so the acronym KIDS stands for knowledge, the K, independence, the I, determination, with the work ethic being the third of D, and then success being the S. And so knowledge, independence, and determination leads to success. And so I'm a big proponent of educating yourself and dreaming about the things that you want to become. I'm also a big proponent of, practicing your own independence. God gave us our own brain for a reason. Why fall in line with everyone else and do what everyone else wants you to do? Determine for yourself what's best for you. D, the work ethic, tying it back to the jump rope that was given to me. If there's something you want to be in life, you educate yourself about it, practice your own independence and make good choices, apply a work ethic, you then can define the success that it may be for you at what level it may be. And so I utilize that to kind of craft my story, because that's what I did in order to change my circumstances, because I'm not supposed to be sitting here talking to you right now based on my life story and where I was born and raised and some of the scenarios that I come out of as far as the environment. But when I speak to kids and individuals, I always try to tell them that, and encourage them to think that your environment doesn't dictate who you are. You dictate how the environment is perceived, and we all have challenges in life that we have to address. And my story, I always thought it would be one that would resonate more with people that could identify with my skin color. But what I've learned here in Maine is that, it's more than just that. I think we all have our challenges, despite what side of the tracks we may come from, what race we're in, what community we're in. So we all have challenges that we have to navigate through. And so I'm more about just being human and very simplified in my message. And, although, like I said, I'm a learner, I'm also about trying to encourage others to do things for themselves as well, too, and find ways in order to overcome challenges that oftentimes may not be in your own design, but because of the cards you were dealt, you have to learn how to deal with them. And so that's my platform that I utilize to really bring simplicity to the fact of, all right, we're human, and like that photo that you showed me in kindergarten, at that age, although my environment was not one that was privileged, I still was told that you can become anything you want to become. And I think as we grow older as adults, we tend to forget that because of responsibilities in that sense, and as an adult, sometimes you also like, well, I can't learn anymore. It's like, well, when you do that, you stop living in that sense. So I just try to tie it all into the fact of, all right, let's be human. Let's not forget what it means to grow, and to grow from being small to large, and continue to do that as we go on, however long we may be. And so that's that platform for me. It's been my story. I've been working towards it for the last 20, 25 years. And it's how I approach everything. I don't have a preset story. I just utilize that model, and I'm authentic as I can be when I'm talking with kids. And I'm pretty much transparent as well, as much as I can be in that sense. But it's all about inspiration, because I tell kids all the time when I go into the schools, because I'm 6'9", and they see me walking, they're like, wow. I'm like, believe it or not, I once sat in a chair like you and I was your size. So don't think that, you too can't become someone that's going to come back in and have influence in a way. And so it's all about aspiration and encouragement, and encouraging individuals to do their best to become whatever it is they want, and don't let anyone slow them down from doing that. So
don't let anything hold you back. Strawberry dropped the link to the USM Promise Scholars talk that you gave. And when I watched it, it's just unbelievable how your story really parallels with that program, right? It's so many first generation kids going to college, coming from challenging circumstances, now being given the keys, an opportunity for education to change their circumstances. So I encourage everyone to watch that talk for sure.
Thank you for that as well too. That's a great program, USM Promise Scholars. It does align with my story, and I share with people all the time. It's not because of the basketball that I'm in the position that I'm in. It's because of my education, and I can stand much more firmly on a book than I can a ball. And I try to have that be the physical and optical piece that I share with people as well too, is that education is the key to everything, So appreciate you highlighting the USM Promise Scholars program, because I think it is a great program.
We could do a whole separate talk on all your community service work, Dajuan. I don't know how you find time for everything that you do, but it's your the way you give back is so aligned with the values of the Celtics and previously the Red Claws. So we're happy to have that and you in our community. So last summer, I guess it was last summer at this point with the George Floyd incident and Black Lives Matter and the move toward racial equity, you were really kind of thrust into the spotlight to share your voice and perspective. What was that like for you?
I won't say it was overwhelming, but yet, you know, my career has been one where I've oftentimes only been the Black person in the room, and particularly amongst executives in the boardroom and things of that nature. And so it's become somewhat commonplace for me to be that way. But last summer was one where I just could not hide, like everyone else that experienced it, my emotions and my feelings toward what was happening, in particular being a Black man in this community and leading an organization as well too. And so with my experience that I've gained and my training that I've gained, in particular when it comes to leadership training, I've recognized the importance of really being able to articulate and also be able to have conversation and provoke conversation, whether it be good or bad, in the sense of like uncomfortableness and things. And last summer was very uncomfortable, you know, but there's reality behind that as well too. And, you know, I think someone just posted a question around how does my platform allow me to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. For me, I see it as an opportunity to really prove people, I won't say wrong, but give them the opportunity to gain an understanding of a different perspective, you know, and I think we all have the opportunity to do that. And for my career, I've oftentimes been the only one doing a lot of things and the first to do something as an individual of color in that way. And I don't look at it like that. I would never strive to have it be that way, but just because of my goal-oriented mindset and me just wanting to break ceilings, I do so in that way. And so, you know, it allowed me to share my voice and perspective. And that perspective being one that wasn't like a comfortable perspective. It was one of like, all right, here's the reality of it. And here's how it's impacting me. And when you talk about the relationships that I've gained across the board, both on the white side and the Black side in this community, are ones in which I'm genuine and I'm authentic, you know, in that sense. And so it allowed me to begin to connect the dots and to begin to put a perspective on the table and out into conversation that more people became more aware of because of the incidents last year. And if you've heard me speak about this in general on other platforms, is that, you know, the George Floyd incident, although it was rooted in race and, you know, last summer, the deeper conversation is around humanity. You know, how can we just be human, you know, in that sense? And oftentimes race and equality and all of the other things that go with it tend to send us off on a tangent, as opposed to going deeper to the fact of, all right, whatever happened to just doing what's right and what's wrong, like treating people the way you want to be treated. And, you know, despite skin color and disability and all that, what about just being human in that way? And so for me, it allowed me to really do deeper thinking on my own, but also not to become reclusive and upset and that militant individual saying, you know, here I am. It was like, how do I bridge the conversation? How do I open the door a little bit more wider so that people can understand how to relate to people like myself, you know, and be given the opportunity to have a voice and come to the table and share a perspective that may be very uncomfortable, but is a reality that needs to be taken into consideration when we begin thinking about how we make this community inclusive for everyone, not just a select few, you know. And so for me, having that responsibility, and it's not a big responsibility, but it's a responsibility I know that comes with success in the environments that I've had, being the only person of color. And so my goal is to be able to open the door for the next person coming behind me and provide accessibility for those individuals as well too, which ties into my story of don't let anyone hold you back, you know. And for me in this community, having those relationships across the board has been pivotal to be part of the Red Claws brand and now the Celtics brand, because I think everyone has engaged with me coming into their facility in the arena. I mean, you see me out when you talk about youth basketball, and although I'm leading the Celtics organization, I'm a former Harlem Globetrotter, I'm accessible, I'm human, you know, and don't let that hold you back in coming and engaging with me in a way in which you get to know me in that sense. And that's, for me, is something that it blows my mind, because I'm just a kid from Birmingham, Alabama, that didn't know my father, that potentially wasn't supposed to be here. And now I'm able to have an impact on you just by being genuine and authentic. And I think that's the key to all of this that we're going through right now. It's just being able to sit down at the table and have a genuine conversation and be authentic, share our truths, and understand that we're going to agree to disagree and agree to agree on certain things, but there are different perspectives that should be taken in consideration. So you get me going on this, Lisa, from a DEI standpoint. I'll be the first one to say I'm not a DEI specialist by any means. I'm an executive that run organizations which DEI has to be a part of. I don't represent all Black people either, but I'm not afraid to have the conversation and provide perspective regarding some of the challenges that we're facing in that way, because it's going to take a lot of effort on all sides to be able to address and come through with a solution to eradicate some of the inequities and systemic racism that exists in our society today.
Yeah, and I'm finding that while you say you're not a DEI expert, I feel like as a company leader, though, some of the the work and the training that I've done has made me realize, well, wait a second, some of this are just leadership principles like inclusivity, like all your employees need to feel valued. How do they feel right now? What's their relationship with you and with your company? So it's been eye-opening in that way. And so we do have a business audience today. What's your guidance for businesses to keep this going? Because you can't just check a box off. Like DEI needs to be part of your core values.
Yeah, and I like in layman's terms, I like to say, please don't window dress, and that's by saying one thing, but then your actions do not follow in a substantial way in that sense. And so what I've been encouraging companies to do is just be bold with your statement and be inclusive around that statement, because I'm sure you may have individuals within your organization that can provide perspective just like I can, but because of their position or because of the uncomfortableness or perhaps lack of a relationship that doesn't exist there, you haven't allowed yourself to be open to that. And so be open to what you have already in your possession and in your workforce, and give them an opportunity to speak who they are and their truth, so that you can bring that perspective to the table to form your position that you're going to go into, because it's easy to become emotional, like we all did last summer around what we saw just by being human. And it's easy to say, all right, here's what we're going to do and put this bold statement out there. But the work comes from, all right, what are we doing now to put action behind it and really move forward on what we said we were going to do. And I think the biggest thing I've requested or I share is that we don't let that window close, because last year was a phenomenon for us as beings to realize that the world stopped and everyone saw it for 8 minutes, 9 minutes, however you want to say, and it put us all in the same place with a humanity lens in front of us, right and wrong. And so I just hope that we don't allow that lens to be removed again. And so we go back to our old ways and that window doesn't shut in that way. And that's part of my efforts of lending my voice and not being afraid to have a conversation, whether it be good or bad, around it, because I don't think that window needs to close now. And I don't think it will. It just seems as though we're getting back into a form of life and where we're getting back to normal. But there are individuals and companies out there doing great things to continue that momentum on. And it's an everyday work. It's not just something you're going to check the box on and then say, all right, we're done, we're going to do it. It should become part of everyday commonplace thought process in that sense. And so that's my encouragement and my voice that I bring to the table, is that I try to encourage individuals not to just respond one moment and say, all right, we're good now because the time has changed. It's like, no, here's what we said we were going to do and how are we going to do that and continue to do that so we can make this place, Maine in particular, inclusive and better for all, not just for a select few. And I think people are seeing that, but I think it's just allowing time to take place and allowing people to figure out, to go through their process and their training or their educational process or their own bias training, whatever it might be, in order to get to that point where they can begin to have genuine conversations around what a solution may look like. And it's not going to happen within the next 5 years or 10 years. It took 400 years to get here.
Right.
It's going to take a long time to get out of it as well, too. And I just hope that people understand it's a long-term race. It's not something that's going to happen because, all right, we have an emotional jaunt from last summer and we felt good and it's making us feel all tingly. You're going to become exhausted. And how are you going to deal with that exhaustion? And this is the reason it's going to be exhausting, is because it should have been happening a long time ago anyway. But now we have to do the work in that sense. And so that's where I stand on it. And I encourage people to continue to push forward on it. And go ahead.
Yeah, it's been encouraging to see the Portland Chamber's taken a leadership position on it. And actually Strawberry also awesomely just posted the link to your Kegs and Issues talk where you were with the Celtics executive talking about the Celtics, Boston Celtics United. But also, another thing that you just added to your to-do list is co-chairing the Maine State Chamber's DEI committee.
Yes, yes. And that was an opportunity that was brought to me earlier this year. And I co-chair with a woman by the name of Natalie Jones. She's the VP of HR for USM here, and great individual. And, you know, as I was brought on board and we had the candid conversations around it, I felt it was an opportunity to really, from a broad stroke, begin to have impact behind the scenes and hopefully open eyes and ears to the fact of how important it is to have inclusivity, diversity, and equity take place across the board within the state as opposed to in select regions. And so, like I shared earlier, I'm not an expert or a DEI specialist, but I am able to bring the light and conversation and perspective to it and connect the dots so that we can begin to put a plan in place strategically that hopefully will work well. And with the Maine State Chamber, they brought on someone by the name of Tae Chong, which most of you may know, that's doing the work on the ground. And so that speaks volumes to an organization like the Maine State Chamber. When you look at it and you look at it across the board, you don't see much diversity there. But the efforts that they put in place by putting a mission statement out there, but now investing in the opportunity to make change and evoke change for everyone in the business community in the state of Maine, I think that's a great move in that sense, you know. And the other thing I like to say about this is that diversity, when you put someone like me at the front of it, oftentimes it's equated with race. But in the state of Maine, it's not just race, equity, gender, disability, the whole nine. And so I think we also need to think about how diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, what it stands for, so that it doesn't scare people when you talk about it. Because, and that's probably the downside to having someone like myself be the faces, because initially it's going to be received as, oh, it's all about race. It's not all about race. It's about a lot of other things as well, too. And I think we need to become educated about what the terms actually mean and what it means to be inclusive for all in that sense. And so there's a lot that I could, you know, begin to go off on a tangent on, Lisa, but I know we only have a limited amount of time.
We appreciate your leadership on it, but it's not just on you. It's on every business leader and making this long-term commitment. So it's good to see that the business community has efforts to move forward, and we just have to hold ourselves accountable and start to measure, are we moving the needle or not? And to your point, it's not going to happen, you know, in 2022, but we've got to show progress and commitment to it. So it'll make us a better state. Well, thank you for that. All right, I'm going to pop into some audience questions that we received in advance. We also have a couple that I see in the chat that I'm going to try to get to. So let's rapid fire through these. From Harry Sudnick. Besides COVID, which is a big one, what do you see as the #1 challenge to Maine professional sports teams?
At this point in time, I think it is just COVID and the impact of that being able to have events, because Maine has been a tremendous state and a community for minor league sports for years. I mean, thanks to the Sea Dogs and us and the hockey teams that have been in existence here, our community loves pro sports, and we've shown that through the minor league sports that have existed here. And so I don't really see any other challenges at this point in time in that sense, because we're like, you know, we're ideal for aligning with New England sports professional franchises. And if you're not aligned with a New England sports team out of Boston, you pretty much shoot yourself in the foot. But Portland, Maine has been lucky to have 3 organizations that are now aligned with the Boston pro sports teams, and you gain access to that here. And so I don't see any other real challenges for minor league sports teams here, because it's a great community for it.
And the business community's behind it too, from a sponsorship perspective. So I think it's great. Okay, I don't know where this question came from, maybe me, but what advice do you have for parents of student athletes? How do you keep it all in perspective? I'm seeing more and more kids like playing one sport year round, like starting in 7th grade.
Yeah. And I attribute that to my own upbringing and the way I was as a kid. I think I have 3 daughters, you know, and they all play basketball, but we were very strict about, all right, you're not going to play one sport year round. You know, and the reason for that is that at a young age, kids do not need to begin developing muscles for one sport, because they're going to grow like I did in high school. I went from being 5'8" to 6'3" over my sophomore year. And so I don't feel it's a great practice to be able to have kids focus on one sport at such a young age. As they get into high school, junior, senior year, and in particular, if they're fortunate enough to be able to go on and hone in and play collegiate sports and perhaps even professional, that's one thing. But at a young age in middle school, no kid should really be focused on one thing and driven to be like their best and think they're going to become a pro athlete, because it's a dime a dozen in that sense. And so I'm a big advocate of having them explore and do multiple things, because that gives them experience and exposure. It also helps with their development and muscle development as well, too. And so that's my position on that, is that I encourage parents to allow kids to do multiple things and not to become over-programmed, because that's the other thing that happens as well too, is that we put kids in so many, like we're running around like bats out of hell on the weekends. And I'm not talking about you, Lisa.
Oh, no. I've
yeah.
been accused of it. Yeah.
But I think we need to allow for that opportunity for kids just to be kids as well too and play, and that's what sandlot activity was for me, is that I was told to get out of the house and play. And when they took that away from me for punishment, it killed me. Most kids today might be like, you're going to punish me and keep me inside. They might play video games, but that was it for me, being outside and just doing things seasonally as it happened. So that's my advice on that and my positioning on that.
You probably don't recommend the Evil Knievel reenactments. Probably.
Well, that's part of being a young boy as well too. Evil Knievel was so I loved it. We built our own bikes and we jumped off of that ramp, and we would go 3 or 4 blocks up and make sure people were standing at the crossroads so cars would come, and go as far as we could and jump as high as we could. No one ever really broke a bone. We broke a couple of bikes, but hey, we had fun while we were doing it.
Yeah, I would love some video from that. Okay. A question from Liz McClellan. How can communities do a better job connecting the children of new Mainers with youth sports programs? The sports teams in my community do not accurately reflect the diversity of our residents.
Yeah. I think that goes back to not being afraid to have the conversation and take the first step. We're all human, and there's something there stopping those organizations within the community from extending their outreach to those kids that may not be part of the community or may be in the community, but not accepted or embraced in that capacity. And so that's what I feel is the potential opportunity that exists. And, one thing we didn't talk about here, Lisa, that is part of my existence here in Maine, is that I co-founded a youth basketball development program 10 years ago. Yeah. And the reason for me doing that was to be able to break down the barrier of zip codes or townships here. And the court was my way of doing that. And so there were kids that came into Blue Wave early on that had no clue or weren't connected to kids in the inner city that were from the suburbs. And once we began applying and training those kids and showing them what could be done on the court and alleviating the barriers that exist inherently because of our environments, all of a sudden these kids became best friends, but the court was utilized to be able to do that, and so not many people I've heard this story from me, but that was my purpose of really being able to bring a youth basketball development program. It was to help those kids that are underserved realize that they deserve to be there, but also those kids that are overserved realize that it's okay to cross the line and have friends, because we're all the same. It's just we come from different advantages that we bring to the table. But the court allowed me to do that with basketball here, and that program is now going on. We're in our 10th, 12th year, doing well, and we've integrated a lot of kids and friendships. And, it's nice to be able to see kids now competing against one another, but also be friends off the court as well, too. And so for that person that mentioned that, I think it just takes someone taking the first step to engage and have the conversation as to why not? Why are we not doing this?
Yeah, that's great advice in Blue Wave. We had a lot of successful seasons at Blue Wave. It's great. Yeah. Are you familiar with the Abyssinian Meeting House restoration project?
Yes, I am. And that's part of the Black history that exists here in the state of Maine that I think oftentimes get overlooked. And for even me coming into Maine, the more I've been here, the more I've learned the importance of the Underground Railroad and the historical landmarks that exist here. And the Abyssinian House being one of 3 safe houses still in existence. I know the Commons family. We've done work with them through our organization, the Red Claws, to support them during Black History Month, as well as other things that have gone on. But I am familiar with that, and I think it's a great project, and I think it's something that, once again, is being underutilized when you talk about historical teaching, in particular about the culture and history here in Maine and what exists across the line for all races, not just a select race that's been chosen to be taught about. But I think it's a great opportunity to bring history, in particular relevant history when it comes to Black and brown individuals in the state, to light in that sense.
And I know we had a story in the Press Herald, which I think Strawberry just posted a link to it, that they have a big fundraising effort underway, which is great if people can support. Okay, I'm pulling this question out of the chat from Ramon Jones. What are the biggest challenges as a minority in making your way into the corporate world? And what advice would you give to others looking for the same, to do the same?
Yeah, I know Ramon, and we've engaged over the years as well, too. And I think it's just persistence and consistency regarding who you are and what you want to become in that sense. And I think it's not easy, and I won't say my road to here has been easy either. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of shut doors, but it's been that persistence. And my idea of what success looked like for me that's gotten me to this point. And, you know, I've had to adjust my own thinking as well. Early on in my career, I would be quick to tell people to F off because my work spoke for itself. But I think as I've become older as well, too, I realized the importance of really being diligent and disciplined about things, but not being afraid to utilize your voice, but not using your voice in a negative way either. And then being accessible and vulnerable. And what I mean by that is like, it's okay to ask for help, in particular as a minority coming in. But those are the challenges that we face as minorities when you talk about corporate America, is the fact that we're oftentimes only given one chance to prove ourselves. And when I go back to the relationship conversation we had earlier about being able to just engage with people, I want people to understand, don't judge a book by its cover. Give an individual, whether it's of the same color or not, the opportunity to prove to you and show to you, not even prove, but show to you that they're human as well. They have flaws, because all of us have flaws. And unfortunately for minorities in the corporate world, you get one chance. You know, and that's the other thing that needs to change with our diversity, equity, and inclusion practice, is the fact of, you know, not only do we need to begin supporting businesses of color and business and individuals of color and organizations, but also giving them the opportunity and the leeway to make mistakes, because that's the only way we're going to advance. And unfortunately, there's the gotcha moment that comes with every minority in organizations, where it's like, all right, so I told you it wasn't going to work. Like, even people today on this conversation with me might be like, well, see, we told you that's what it was going to be like. And that's something that has to change across the board for everyone to have a chance at opportunity and success, not just a select few.
Yeah, that's such an important message. We have gone over time. I knew this was going to happen. We could talk for the rest of the day, but guess what, Maine? It is a beautiful day out there. Who's punching out early? I might do that. But let's wrap up with Bill Green's question about, how did you get into fishing?
My friend Bill Green. So fishing started for me early on in Birmingham. Everything from cane pole fishing to spin rod to fly fishing, which is what I enjoy right now. I'm self-taught in that hell, but I've done all types of fishing across the country, whether it be catfish, carp, to crappie, to saltwater fish down in the Gulf, to moving to the Midwest and doing like fish out of the Lake Michigan, salmon, as well as coming here and doing trout fishing. So I enjoy fishing across the board, but I'm self-taught across the board. And it's a lifetime hobby of mine.
I can't believe we don't have a picture of you with a big catch.
You didn't ask me for that, Lisa.
I know. It's Robert. So wrap up and share the picture of Dajuan with his beautiful family. You have two girls in college, one in middle school, and both your college age girls play basketball too, right? They
do. One goes to Bowdoin, the other one goes to Emmanuel, and then my little one's middle school right now, Lincoln Middle School. And so very proud of them as individuals and what we've gone through as a family, and look forward to them continuing on and being successful in their own lives, how they choose to be, but just trying to be the example of what, you know, determination and work ethic can provide for you in life if you allow yourself to be open to it and ask for assistance with it. So,
well, thank you so as you should be. Thank you so much for raising your family here in Maine, being in Maine. We all look forward to seeing you at a Maine Celtics game. I mean, obviously, you get the hand sanitizer ready because you are the ambassador for all those games. You must be exhausted when you get home.
Well, you know, the first couple of years I was, because once again, I'm competitive and it's always about winning. Our business is simply winning. That's it. You know, and that's what I love about being with the Celtics. We're in the business of winning championships. And there used to be years where I would come out and be exhausted at the end of the season. I would get sick, but I've had to moderate that now and just understand that, all right, we come back every year and we want to do the same thing, and we can't let the emotions get too high or too low. And so I look forward to seeing everyone out, and this is the last thing I'll end on here, Lisa, in a sense of like what I do for this organization and what this organization has done in its community, but more importantly, what the community has done for our organization, is that I'm extremely appreciative for those individuals that have supported us over the last 10, 12 years, supported me as well too. Desperately look forward to coming back in a strong way as the Maine Celtics, to see you out at the facility and continue to have the embracement of this community the way it has over the last few years for future years to come. And so thank you, our partners, supporters, and others in this community for being such strong, having a strong presence with us over the years. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you here, Lisa. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you more and more over the next few weeks as well too.
For sure. Well, thank you. And my apologies to the folks that I didn't get to your questions. So I'm really sorry about that. I didn't manage the time as effectively as I should have. You'll get an exit survey when you leave. We're doing our planning for 2022. Boy, we hope it's going to be in person, but we'd love to hear from you as to who you'd like to see me talk to. And also Josh Broder, the CEO of Tilson Technologies, is my guest coming up in October. So we look forward to that. So I hope you catch some big ones this weekend, Dajuan, and I'm so excited to learn about your fishing and all your friends that were here today in support of you. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you as well. Have a good
All right,
weekend.
have a great weekend, everyone.